You got it, Max?
You're on?
Yep, I'm on.
Oh, yeah, there's an empty chair. Oh, no, I see that.
All right, let me go ahead and put you on mute. I'm going to go ahead and do a sound check.
If you put me on mute, how are you gonna?
Maggie, I hear you on, so hold on, I'm putting you on. All right, this is a sound check, about a minute and a half out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If I can get a thumbs up, Maggie. Thank you, Maggie. Got you loud and clear. Let me make sure. All right. Well, good evening. This is Chris Lukasevich. This is Carbon Matters live streaming from 2 Hazard Square, the Carbon County Administration Building. I want to thank so much for everyone joining in on this pandemic Thursday evening, Easter weekend on the eve of Good Friday. I just wanted to come back together. It's really been almost about 153, 154 days since I've last had an opportunity type of environment. You may note that Maggie isn't co-located beside me. She's actually in a remote location, actually doing a little bit of recovery from some appendicitis over the last 2 weeks or so. So Molly's home 24/7, Maggie's home 24/7. Graham is helping out at the house, and we're just having a great time during this pandemic. I know it's been challenging for everyone, and ourselves included. So I appreciate the intestinal fortitude of the residents of Carbon County who continue to persist or continue to drive on in some very challenging times here. This is not going to be the standard Carbon Matters that many of us were used to pre-November 6 or so. This is really going to be a wide open forum. I'm hoping to have a conversation and a dialogue. There's no doubt for the next hour I could probably just talk, and talk. That is not my intention at all. What I'd like to do is start on some topics and then just to get things rolling. At any time you do have a question, just go ahead, put it in there in the little chat area of Facebook. If I don't see it, I do have a big screen over to my right. I have a small screen in front of me. I am going to touch my face once in a while, but I have sanitized my hands. I wore gloves coming into the office this evening, so I'm fairly safe. At least the sense that there's no problems with my hands having any type of foreign materials that might be a viral type hazard to me. I just always touch my face. So again, this is Carbon Matters live streaming, and we're just getting started here. I'm getting settled in. This is the first time that I've actually live streamed from my office here. There were quite a few people over the first 6-8 weeks who came in and visited me here in the office. The walls were completely bare. I assure you, if I had an opportunity to kind of move the camera around, you would indeed see that with the help of Maggie, I have transformed this place more into something that represents who I am, where I came from, my beliefs, my values, and what I'm trying to bring to the residents of Carbon County as a commissioner, duly elected and blessed to be able to have taken office on 6 January. So let's go ahead, let's get started here. I'm going to start talking about some COVID-19 things. I think first and foremost, though, we should probably recognize that while we're seeing some numbers that are concerning, Carbon County is extremely blessed up until this point. We are surrounded, Lehigh, Monroe, Luzerne, Northampton, and then Schuylkill down to the southwest by 5 counties that have notable incidents of COVID-19. The latest figures at 12 o'clock today from the Department of Health, I keep my kind of running tab up there, was 83 and 2. Today was the jump from 1 to 2 deaths. We had a slight jump in the numbers. The numbers are actually a little less of a climb than they had been over the last couple days. But again, we're ranked right now of the 67 counties. Now all of them, as of today, it was 65 as of yesterday, we're ranked right about number 3 in the highest number of reported cases. You'll see folks like Lehigh, Luzerne, Monroe, they're really up there. And 4 of the 5 counties that surround us are actually in the top 10. So again, we are very fortunate with the current numbers that we hold. I see plenty of people are coming in. Thank you so much for joining Chris Lukasiewicz here. This is Carbon Matters live streaming. I'm right at 2 Hazard Square. You know, I like to move and fidget quite a bit. And without Maggie being here, I'm probably doing it a lot more than normal. So looking at, so what is going on right now that I think is really important? COVID-19, obviously, that is absorbing probably about 75 to 85% of the time here in the courthouse and specifically in the commissioner's office. But the day-to-day business of county does go on with some limitations and absolutely some reduced staffing. I was looking through some of the newspaper articles as those who've joined me all throughout the previous year in Carbon Matters. I like to keep the newspapers and go through them. Probably one of the biggest impacts that COVID-19 has had on operations of county government has most recently been demonstrated through the furlough that recently took place. Actually took place effective this past Monday, starting at 8:30 in the morning. On about March 16th, March 17th is when the county started really ramping up and having a significant or notable concern with COVID-19, and we started reducing the flow of individuals into the courthouse, creating some preventative measures to reduce the possibility of any type of virus being contracted either by residents or employees. And that simply started with the first document that we sent out, that while we were going to continue to operate all offices from 8:30 to 4:30, we insisted upon email, online, phone as the primary means, and of course complement it with internet use to do those normal day-to-day services. And as a last resort, actually going ahead and setting up an appointment and coming in, visiting the office for which you might have some type of business. Well, as COVID-19 progressed, with federal and state government functions being reduced or their operations, the economy starting to sputter, there's actually less and less activity here within the agencies, and many of the agencies, I should say, not all, many of the agencies or departments here in Carbon County that fall under the county commissioners, the row offices, and also the Court of Common Pleas. And I'll bring them. Oh, thanks, Maggie. I just saw that note about writing any comments, and you'll bring them to my attention. So early last week, that brought us to the point where we continued to be significantly concerned with the spread of COVID-19 in Carbon and our surrounding counties. So first and foremost, as we were considering the furlough, it was safety, the health and welfare of the employees, of which at the point there's approximately just a couple under 400, with about 25% being part-timers, 297 or so, 96 being full-timers. So one, we want to protect their health, their welfare, right, their safety, and understanding that each night they go home, they're interacting with family members. So how could we take care of their safety? We also started noticing we had a potential a cash flow problem in the county. With the unemployment that was taking place that all of us are very, very aware of, there was an expectation that tax revenue, which normally starts coming in the first week in April, would not come in at the projected rate based upon the budgets from the previous years. So therefore, we knew we were going to have a cash flow problem. Then on top of that, as I mentioned, you had less work for the employees. Now, for about the first week, just over a week, we were paying some individuals to be in their homes and on call and available. That was our first step to reduce the footprint of individuals in the office. We knew ultimately we'd have to make the decision either to keep the people working, possibly telecommuting if the work would allow it, or being in the office, or ultimately making a furlough decision. Extremely difficult situation, extremely difficult position to be in. But a decisive decision was made in consideration of, again, safety, the reduced workload, and of course the fiscal realities that we are starting to see. And that was a cash flow. And on top of that cash flow, understand things like what would normally come from the parking, from Mock Chunk Lake Park, even hotel tax is going to continue to go down. So those three factors led us to the furlough. And I have a small chart behind me, I think most can probably see, and it highlights where we stand with our furlough. It might be a little bit of the details, but we currently have 97 individuals who are on furlough. A full furlough, we have 44 full-time employees that are completely furloughed. 17 part-time employees are fully furloughed. That's from those that fall under the commissioner's office. Then under the row offices, like the Prothonotary Clerk of Courts, Register of Wills, Prothonotary, etc., we have 21 full-time that are furloughed and 1 part-time individual. And finally, in the courts, you have 14 individuals that are furloughed. Now, you will see some distinct categories here. And those categories are, you have the full furlough, individuals who are only working 30 hours, been reduced to 3 days of hours or 2 days of hour. And again, that was taken into consideration, that workload. Some offices will continue to have a steady stream of work, so you may need an individual in 30 hours a week in lieu of their normal 37.5 or 35. Other offices, not so much, because maybe more of their services were available online. So that gave us 4 different categories to work with to minimize the impact on the individuals. Now, it is the aspiration of all of us that we can keep them as financially whole as possible. We do know we have the state unemployment insurance, federal unemployment, that will be supplemented with an additional up to $600 per week from the federal government. And we hope with that and the fact for those who have been furloughed, we're going to go ahead, the county will pay the medical copay for them. Our assessment is that will balance out, and that we expect the majority of furloughed individuals should be very close to retaining their pre-furlough salary and incomes level. There will definitely be exceptions to every rule, and it will be painful. It'll just be as painful as waiting for that first unemployment check to come in also. I think fortunately we just had a payday for this week, so individuals should have some residual savings and in their checking account to allow them to make it until the unemployment kicks in if they happen to have a low savings. Even though the recommendation is you should have at least 6 months of income in your savings, I think there's probably very few who actually have 6 months of income, tucked away for a rainy day or for a pandemic. So that is the furlough. And again, if you have any questions, please go ahead, type them in. If I don't catch them, Maggie's on the line here, and she will kind of give me a good reminder that there's a question. Today in the commissioners meeting, and for the last couple of weeks, and really since the 3rd week in March, when the commissioners had teleconferences with Representative Heffley, Senator Udechak, and also Senator Casey, we were making a concerted effort to ensure that the COVID-19 confirmed cases and the deaths associated with them, the geodata, so the location of those cases would be provided to our emergency management coordinator in our 911 center. And the expectation was, with that information, when an ambulance, police officer, firemen were dispatched to a specific street, the data of the confirmed COVID cases could be reconciled to ensure that the officers or the first responders would be taking the maximum protective measures possible in order to mitigate any risk to them. Unfortunately, up until this date, the Department of State, its Department of Health, has not provided this geodata information to Carbon County. Now, many individuals have been asking, well, we see other counties are providing at least the municipality information. As best we can determine, the reporting that you're seeing from those counties that are showing what municipalities the cases are from is actually because they have a county Department of Health, and those entities, hospitals, emergency rooms that fall under the hospitals, they're reporting their numbers up through that local Department of Health and up to Department of State. So they are a collector of the information at the county level. The larger counties, of course, have the departments of health, and they are providing that information to their elected officials. Unlike Carter County, who we have to rely either on getting the information directly from the hospitals, which they are authorized to do even with HIPAA. The Code of Federal Regulations does clearly delineate that that information can be provided for emergency management purposes. So we can either get it from the hospitals directly or from the Department of Health at the state level. And none of those entities are providing that data that we think is critical for protecting our first responders. Maggie, is there anything coming across I need to be aware of?
Chris, Keith is, that actually answered Bill Carley's question.
Okay.
Keith asked one before him. Is there any truth that the county can save in excess of $600,000 by refinancing while things are low?
Yes, that is, and made that announcement last week's commissioners meeting. What it is, we have 3 series of municipal bonds. The most recent ones are not in a position where they can be basically, refinanced. Let's use that term. However, the older bonds, we will be closing out and reissuing a new bond for the remaining money that's left. Right, the estimate about 2 weeks ago, when we had our bond counselors in, was about a $640,000 savings if we would have done it right at that minute. Now, of course, it takes a little bit of time to get all the paperwork together and such, but that's what we were preparing for. So what's going to happen, the 2016 series of municipal bonds, which actually have a call date in 2021 and would not mature to 2041, we're going to go ahead and redo that whole bond series, and it's projected right now at $640,000 savings over the lifetime of the new bonds. So we'll see notable savings from that. And then in 2022 and 2024, we'll actually be able to look at the other bonds, the 2017 series and 2019 series, depending, of course, on the rates at that time. So this is a great find there. I suspect in the next 60 days or so, that should all wrap up, and we'll have clear numbers, and we'll do a new bond issue on that. All right.
There's another question. Jennifer Pantella, do you have any information we can share about a county economic recovery plan for when it's considered safe to open back up, or areas for improvements for sustainability for carbon forward? And then there's a follow-up with that of what advice would you have for the helping homeless community in regards to public safety?
Okay. All right. First and foremost, I think it's unfortunate that as of right now, at least at the commissioner's office, we have not made a formal engagement in regards to reopening, let's say, the county for business. I do know that there will be a conversation on Tuesday or Wednesday this week when the commissioners meet at 1:30. That's our normal. We all come together at least virtually or teleconference, depending on the particular day, where we're going to be looking at what can we leverage, what entities can we leverage to start thinking about synchronizing and coordinating with residents' restart and Governor Wolf's eventual plan to re-energize and restart the economy. So we need a synchronization, coordination all the way down through those 3 levels. And here in Carbon County, the organization that we would expect to leverage to do that is Carbon Chamber Economic Development Corporation. So I'll have a conversation with Kathy Henderson, who really works the economic development side, talk to her about what are the thoughts, the plans, coming together, start having those conversations with kind of just looking at a D-Day, not a specific date, but a D-Day. So one that we can adjust and shift as the COVID starts to disintegrate, or the economy is in a position where we're able to open it back up based upon what is occurring with the pandemic. But as of right now, up until this date, quite frankly, we've been putting out fires, not really being able to see more than just a couple weeks ahead of us, because we know we're still just a little bit behind on the curve. So again, we're hitting those 25-meter targets, engaging them, yet we recognize we need to start looking out a little bit further, because this will indeed eventually end. I think an extremely difficult challenge would be, how do we deal and help any homeless at this time? We recognize that the shelters in Carbon County are not open due to the threat. That is, they're not taking additional individuals under their care and comfort. What we have asked is the community of interest, those who are concerned with this issue, we want to go ahead and leverage the homelessness task force that was previously set up. I hate to throw a name out here, but those in the community know Christine has been really, as far as I'm concerned, the tip of the spear on that. She continues, amongst other duties. Okay, Christine's on there. Christine, sorry to throw your name out there, but you are the woman when it comes to synchronization, coordination, and making things happen. So we have recently received an email from a concerned party this week. We connected those concerns with Christine, and there has been some conversation going back and forth. So I'm going to really delegate that to the homelessness task force, with the expectation that the commissioners will reach out and stay in contact with them to try to find appropriate accommodations for anyone who is determined to be homeless and unavailable to find shelter during these times. So let me just write a note here about that, the homelessness. All right. And thanks for the citizen who sent that note. There are a couple of them that came in over the last couple of days. All right. Maggie, was there any other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the crisis is over, this is Leroy Stroll. When the crisis is over, has there been discussion about extending the hours of operation for all agencies to catch up on the backlog of daily duties of county government?
Well, that's actually a great question, because that's one thing we actually have been looking at, which is a bit further down the road. So with a little bit of foresight. It appears right now that there is a potential of a log jam of processes building up. An example might be, and the clearest example for me, we know this month 137 licensed to carry firearms or concealed carry cards will expire. Plus, we had an additional week or two in March of individuals whose cards expired. While the governor has extended those carry permits through 30 May, we recognize that when county government reopens full on for business and offering those services again, there will be a notable influx. So therefore, we have started thinking about, for a couple offices that may have that log jam and it breaks open, that we will have to use some of our resources and put them into potential additional hours as needed in respective offices. So again, we don't have a good sense right now of what that backlog might look like, but we are already discussing the fact that as we may be saving some money perhaps currently in the furlough, we do understand that by having less people working, there might be a few offices that might get a little bit behind, and we need to prepare to inject the revenue into potential overtime or comp time hours so those offices can catch back up. Mostly in any type of process or service that directly impacts a citizen. So yes, we are looking in that, and it is being considered at this time. All right.
Okay, but there's another, there's a follow-up by Keith. Are we allowing those furloughed employees to work remotely as not to fall behind through issuing laptops, kind of the same, and VPN access to county systems? For us being able to keep up on things.
No, furlough individuals are furloughed. There is no work. Remember, there was 3 critical factors that went into determining the furlough. 1 was safety, health, and welfare of the workers. 2, the reduced workload that there is because individuals aren't coming in. Individuals are doing things online. And thirdly, there was the fiscal. Right? The fact is, we have to be very conscientious of the money we're spending because we expect a potential cash flow problem because of tax revenue not coming in at its normal rate. So we are not allowing, if you're furloughed, you're furloughed. I will tell you there are certain offices that are not furloughed, though, that are basing out of their homes or doing work from their homes and have been issued laptops. And I'll give you probably 2 or 3 examples. Adult probation, youth probation, children and youth, and agency on aging caseworkers. All of them have flexibility to access their email, access the systems that are able to be accessed via laptops, and work remotely to minimize the amount of time or times they have to come into the office and bring whatever is out there into 76 Susquehanna, the courthouse, or the annex itself. So there are some access that is taking place remotely, but not the furloughed individual at all. So we talked about property tax, and although you may not be able to see it, because I have 2 big dry erase boards. This is my 3x4, and then I have a 5x8 that is totally full to my left side here. This is kind of my daily notes one that is constantly changing. Talking about the property tax, we all got our tax bills. Understand you had the property tax from the borough, property tax from the county, and we had a per capita tax and occupation tax from Jim Thorpe, where we're at. But specifically, the county tax that I'm looking at, make sure my numbers are right. Right, the 12.25 mil, right? From 1 April to 31 May, we see a 2% discount period, right? Where you get a discount on the base or face amount. Now, our expectation is the majority of individuals who have a mortgage have an escrow account. And I'm talking about those who have a mortgage through a bank or lending institution. So we expect those banks and financial institutions to be paying during the discount period, as they historically do. It's going to be the individuals who may have their homes already paid off and pay their taxes individually, who may have a necessity to not pay in the discount period. But then you do have the base period, which is really would be the month of June to the end of July, a 60-month period where you're paying the face value of your tax. Then on 1 August, that's when the penalty period starts. Now there is a a House bill that went to the Senate that would allow the county to modify those dates. Right now, the county doesn't have the authority to modify those dates. That's a state law or regulation statute. The only thing the county could do at this time, we could play with the discount or with the penalty. However, that bill that was in the House went to the Senate. The Senate amended it, therefore it had to go back for reconciliation to the House. And then there was a recess. We don't expect the House to be in session again until after the Easter holiday, and the hope is that this Senate bill that has been now amended and back at the House for the amendments to be considered will eventually give the county at least the option to modify these dates. So if it's determined, it would be of great assistance to those individuals who may be struggling or will be struggling. We can modify the due dates of the taxes. Now, I will tell you of the survey I saw done of about 15 counties. The majority of them up to this time have made no adjustments to their discount or their penalty period, one way or another. But again, I think everyone like us are waiting to see what occurs with the Senate bill. And that makes sense, because then our left and right limits will be a little bit broader and give us a better idea of what realistically we can do. All right, so that's it.
Chris?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done with your thought.
Yeah, I am. Go ahead.
Okay. Question from Claire Hughes. Is the county taking a proactive approach to assisting all healthcare facilities in receiving proper PPE?
Yes.
Assisted living and skilled nursing facilities specifically, as these provider types are being overlooked.
Yeah, no, and actually not. I'll give you an example. We have our emergency management coordinator up at Broad Mountain. We have a supply of gloves, masks, and the gowns, and we have been regularly providing them to first responders and organizations that have needed them. We did a survey of the long-term care facilities in Carbon County 2 weeks ago to see what their needs were and how they were doing. PEMA, Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, has just provided additional PPE, personal protective equipment, to the long-term facilities, such as the Summit, what we know as Weatherwood, down at Mahoning. So they are actually being taken care of through a combination of resources that the county has available, and plus that which the state is providing through PEMA, so the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. It would have been about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago on Friday, there was a large donation from the company Sharps up in Nesquehoning that provided the PPE to St. Luke's and to LVHN. So given the caseload that we currently have, all reporting to us is we're in good shape. We stand ready to assist. And again, we do have limited supplies of PPE available that we can move where it is needed, be it the long-term care facilities, even limited help to the hospitals. But since the first tranche of PPE, the hospitals have not come back to us, St. Luke's or LVHN, for additional PPE. Right now, we're also now focusing on our county employees who have to engage with the citizens, right? Both the caseworkers, Agency on Aging, Children and Youth, Adult Probation, and importantly, our corrections officers, who we want them fully protected also. So that's kind of a little shift in our priorities right now because we don't have the demand signal from those other entities. So we can shift more focus onto those caseworkers, corrections officers, etc. All right. All right. So,
Okay, so someone asked about the prison too, and you kind of hit on that a little bit. I don't know if you want to speak more on that.
yeah, I will, just a little bit
What?
more. Yep, I'll hit on that just a little bit more because I think it's been very good what we've done at the prison. We took a population of just under about 240 down to just over 200. And again, some people were naturally being paroled. You had some very vulnerable individuals that were at the end of their or very near no risk to the citizens who were able to be released. What else we did, we suspended visitation, right? There's no visitation at the prison except when legal representation has to go up, their lawyers. We stopped the work release program, and all volunteer programs have been stopped. So that's to ensure that individuals aren't going outside the prison and bringing COVID-19 into a closed petri dish environment there. Obviously, reducing the population now has given us some breathing room. So as we potentially identify someone with the symptoms, we have the room to isolate individuals in the county prison. So it was a multi-faceted approach to kind of create some breathing room in there and reduce the risk of contamination or transmission of COVID-19 in our prisons at this time. All right. Oh.
Hey, Chris, the next question is by Byron.
Yeah.
It's actually more of a school board question, but I think you know the answer. It says, "Hi, Chris. Just wondering about the families that maybe cannot afford the technical availability of the internet to continue the education at home. Would like the various admins of the districts in the county to touch on this a little. I understand this is not a commissioner issue, but maybe you could convey your thoughts on this. I hear a lot about the seniors and their plight."
Right. Again, what percentage of individuals don't have high speed or Wi-Fi access? I don't know what the true numbers are of that. My position is that if the school is going to provide the computers, are going to go to an e-learning, distant learning education, then we should be providing or ensuring the access to the internet so that education can actually take place. Now, the challenge you have right now, there are some dead spots, unquestionably, in Carbon County, or maybe the bandwidth is not sufficient in certain areas. So we're not going to have the 100% solution this time around, but I would like to think during our after action reports of the school districts, of the county, we're going to identify those gaps that we have and prepare us to implement more successfully in future requirements, such as, with e-learning using snow days. We were pushing for use of technology for snow days about 2 winters ago. Unfortunately, the school didn't move forward for it, and we were kind of caught flat-footed here with the pandemic, where I would argue if we would have tried implementing that during school days, when there were snow days, we would have had at least a baseline of problems and issues that we could have been worked towards resolving. But again, I thought we got caught pretty darn flat-footed. The other thing that can happen with e-learning, when the devices are in school, a couple weeks worth of lessons plans can be uploaded onto the computers, so you don't need at least regular access for that. You just need it intermittently when you have to upload assignments and things of that nature. Of course, optimal is that, just like we're doing here, having that constant conversation with your professors, your teachers, and doing that. But I will reach out and also, though, talk to the Jim Thorpe School Board to try to get a little bit more insight plan that started this Monday to see how they're doing with their e-learning. All right.
Chris, in the newspaper it said if people didn't have Wi-Fi at their home, that they could contact the school or whatever, and that they would work out a way to get, if they didn't have Wi-Fi in their home or something. It was in an article in one of the newspapers.
All right, it was probably one of the most recent ones, and I overlooked that particular piece. I would like to think, at least in this trying period, Blue Ridge Cable TV 13 would step up to the plate and try to fill that void. I know we're starting to hear some resistance on 5G technology, but there is no question in my mind 5G technology is going to help us bridge that technology gap, that additional bandwidth, that speed, that more universal availability, because of the multitude of antennas that are going to be based around. And again, I do know there are some health concerns that some individuals are voicing, but in order to get to the next level, 5G is where we're going to have to go. But we do need to do it safely, but that's going to be a critical factor in online learning and education, just as it's going to be in smart car technology, things of that nature. All right.
Chris, next question.
Yeah.
It's from Keith, and are the local acute rehab facilities accepting new clients? I ask since my wife is in need of an acute rehab and applied to St. Luke's Lehighton and was refused access.
I don't know. I do know rehab is taking place. I have no idea if they're taking new patients on, unfortunately. I'm sorry, I don't know. All right. So concealed carried extensions, talked about that. Talked about the release of personal health information from Lehigh Valley, St. Luke's, Pennsylvania Department of Health. We talked property tax. We talked about the budget, some of the challenges that we see, right, with the revenue, our cash flow, and, over time, post-COVID-19. So I know those questions were previously asked. I hit upon some of the information about the furlough, 97 individuals right now, and we have 65, almost 79. The majority of them are, of course, full-time employees who have been furloughed to some degree. Want to just refresh, right? The furlough was out of safety, workload, and the fiscal reality. Hey, surprisingly, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised because some people aren't as well connected as others, and I'm talking, being on Facebook or reading the paper and stuff like that. The election, the primary election, has been delayed to 2 June. We are starting to see a significant number of requests for mail-in ballots coming in. I know there was a mailer that came out this past week from one party emphasizing the mail-in ballot options. While we had an election board meeting today, just after the commissioners' meeting, there wasn't much open discussion on some of the things we are looking at, but I will tell you that we are expecting a notable increase in the number of mail-in ballots than we previously planned for the 2 June election, simply because of there might be some hesitance to come to a polling place. We also suspect there's going to be a high rate of individuals who will not want to work the polls, who normally work the polls. Well, it's our senior citizens tend to be the poll workers. So again, we're looking at a potential challenge when it comes to poll workers. We are looking at the possibility and feasibility of consolidating some voting locations, because we're not going to have we don't suspect we're going to have the poll workers to man all the polls. So we are looking at the possibility of consolidating some of the polls into very large venues where we can still ensure social distancing, but safely bring the people in, yet minimize the number of poll workers that require. So, and we are looking at Department of State is providing PPE and what they call election kits that are going to help to ensure the safety both of the voters and the individuals working the polls. It was on up here. I did see, I was talking about the private information, right? The HIPAA protected information. Just in the last 3 weeks alone, we've had over 1,300 dispatches of first responders to incidents. Every one of those incidents was a potential interaction with a carrier of COVID-19. And again, over 1,300 of them just in about the last 3 weeks. So again, that's why this geo information is so critical for us at the Emergency Management Center to have. While we are really in the midst of this event, interesting, we're already starting to think about our after action report. And I'm hoping really to take the lead on that, within in-county government, and over about a 4 to 6 week period after we get on the backside of this pandemic, to start looking at the lessons learned. What were the issues? How can we better prepare for the next time? And then how do we resource that? For example, it's just been 4 weeks that we've been live streaming, right? My colleagues did not believe on 6 January that live streaming was important value on 6 January. Well, we saw the necessity, or they saw the necessity of it real quick, come just a few weeks ago when there's clear recognition we weren't getting information out. We weren't getting information out, and we could no longer openly invite the public to our meetings. There's nothing that prohibits public presence, but we highly discourage it because of the threat it does pose. So therefore, able to convince my colleagues that the only way to do it would be through live streaming for now. But we don't have the equipment. We're working off a laptop. But we need to look at all those factors of what went wrong, what were we not prepared for, how can we prepare for this in the future, and how do we resource that within the fiscal realities. And again, the fiscal reality to me is not raising taxes. So how do we become more effective, more efficient? All right. Let me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Joan is asking, will the county consider continuing with the decarceration strategies used during COVID-19 to continue to achieve continued population reduction? Can you list benefits to reduce prison population in Carbon County outside of COVID?
Yeah. First and foremost, primarily it's the prison board and the courts issue. So you have two, let me call primary stakeholders that are involved, right? Now, of course, the courts, the judge, the president judge, sits on the prison board with the commissioners, with the controller, with the warden, etc., sits on the board. I think we do have to continue to look at options short of prison, right? Short of prison options, or SOPO, as I used to refer to it as, to keep the population down. And why is it important, first and foremost? One, we know that prison tends to be a schoolhouse for the next generation or improved criminals. We know that they're not providing for many the true care that they're needing because of some of the mental health challenges specifically. Our prisons aren't set up to handle the level of mental health problems we're seeing. And importantly, recognizing it costs us each year for each prisoner anywhere in the neighborhood of about $27,000 to $28,000. So there's a fiscal benefit also to keeping the prison population down. And I would always go back and look at the safety. When it's less crowded, it is an environment in which corrections officers are at less risk. So you have your safety, you have your fiscal, you have your treatment, and just better treatment overall. So I think there's a multitude of reasons why the lessons applied here in COVID have definite application post-COVID. And hopefully this has been a forcing mechanism for some entities, departments, and officials to recognize that these things we were reluctant to do that have now become a necessity are actually a tool that can be used in the future. All right. Hey, I did have a good conversation today, just so you know, the end is in sight, right? We're actually starting to talk fall foliage here in Carbon County already, and the potential for, will that be the first really big event to return to Carbon County? So I want to send my gratitude to the conversation, to the folks who participated in the conversation today about the fall foliage or Oktoberfest coming back to Jim Thorpe and Carbon County. Oh, for the folks up in Penn Forest Township, I think you're aware, I made mention of it today, the FAA has done a determination of no hazard to navigation, an extension, 18-month extension for the Avangrid project that's planned for the Bethlehem Water Authority. So basically all the FAA said, based upon the request from Avangrid, the company that's planning that wind turbine farm up in the Bethlehem Water Authority, we've extended our no hazard determination for another 18 months. However, if Avangrid does not start that project within 18 months, they will have to go back through the entire process for a determination for the entire project. So it will be important for Avangrid. I'm sure they're hoping for the judge to make a determination soon. So if they get the green light, they can start. I'm opposed to it, but nonetheless, it's in the court's hand right now. So that was a big item that came up here just within the last 2 weeks or so from the FAA. All right. Anything else out?
Another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is from Pete McElmoyle. Yay! Space was an issue in the building. Since you have staff working remotely now, do you think this could be a long-term plan to construct the building?
You know, Pete, and that's a great question. And, you know, we discussed this last year, let me use that term, that the county has not been open to telecommuting, basing out of your homes. But I think you hit the proverbial nail on the head. You know, this is the forcing mechanism to show that it can work. You know, I mentioned those offices, you know, children and youth, adult probation, juvenile probation, area agency on aging. All of those have caseworkers or officers who could, for the majority of their time, base out of their homes and come into the office for certain critical meetings, organizational type events and stuff like that. I'm hoping we will be able to use some of that logic and some of that experience that we're gaining here in telecommuting to help reduce the overall space needs that are being examined. And I will tell you, Pete and everyone, that we are slowly, and we were moving at a pretty good clip, re-examining from the ground up what the actual space requirement needs are. If you'd be able to see my big dry erase board over to my right, you would see a lot of data and figures and costs associated with square foot, rent, utilities of county departments and agencies. We are looking and we are having regular meetings with architects and stuff about determining what are the actual space needs and where can those space needs be met. I absolutely, completely am against any new construction on Susquehanna Street, either in what is the 76 Susquehanna Street parking lot, building 44 or 44 Susquehanna Street, which is the old archives maintenance building. My position for that building is sell it. Let a private entity or individual be concerned with the issues that might result from construction or demolition. I don't think the county should go near that building. We should sell it as soon as possible. Fire sale and get rid of that. But again, collectively, the three commissioners will have to make a decision. And unfortunately, at some point, it will be potentially a 2-to-1 vote. It may not be a 3-0 vote, depending on what we ultimately decide is the best way ahead. But again, I'm completely against new construction on Susquehanna Street. I've been against it from day one. I do recognize we have space problems in our county, and I think we probably need about 15,000, 20,000 square feet maximum, and that would be looking into the future. Understanding the last 76 or Susquehanna Street project was planning, in addition to the couple level parking garage, over 25,000 square feet. That can easily be reduced 20%, maybe even a little bit more, just ensuring that if we're going to renovate or build somewhere, we're building for the future and not just for today, Let me go through my list here. If anything pops up, let me know, Mags. We got a couple minutes.
One last question.
Yeah.
Do the commissioners have any information on the availability of any kind of test kits? This is Mary Ann's question.
Any type of what?
Test kits.
No, none at all. We have no essay on what, and we're talking COVID-19. We have no situational awareness as to the number of kits that are available. However, we do completely support what is more or less the triage that is currently taking place right now in regards to who gets tested and who doesn't get tested. Of course, as more tests become available, the expectation is that more people can be tested. But right now, neither St. Luke's or Lehigh Valley has made any public statement or private statement to us saying they don't have sufficient test kits for the potential cases that they're seeing. In a perfect world, everyone could be tested, both for the antibody and for the the presence of the virus itself. I'm running through my list here, making sure I didn't miss anything, Maggie.
Just real quick, Scott said he saw one very large piece of heavy equipment being delivered on Reservoir Road, Penn Forest Township yesterday. So could they possibly be starting?
No, because the case is still under consideration by the Court of Common Pleas in Carbon County. So that case is still in court, so no decision has been made. All right. Okay. I think we're going to wrap it up there, Maggie. Hey, guys, I want to thank you all so much for joining me. I am going to tell you, though, I've missed this extremely, having this opportunity here. I even miss more so having Maggie at a distance versus sitting right beside me here. Again, thank you all for joining me. I do want to ensure that feel free, 570-503-6780. That's the phone number, 570-503-6780. That's my direct line, to that cell phone on my hip pocket. Maggie, if you wouldn't mind typing that in for me, please, that'd be great if you don't mind. Also, type in my phone number in the comments section of Facebook,
Okay.
the 570. Also, my email address in the county is C as in Charlie, C. Lukasiewicz at carboncounty.net. That's another way to go directly to me. So feel free to give me a call, send me an email, and once we get on the backside of COVID-19, those who haven't come visit me in the office, please drop in and see me in the office. There's really never a bad time to come in. Just, if you want to drop me a quick call prior or an email, that's always wonderful, of course, because, I may be involved in something else. But I would love for you to drop by, come on up here, have a Pepsi, have a Coke, have a water, let's sit, have a chat, inform me of the issues and concerns that you have on a one-to-one manner. My extreme gratitude to all those guys, gals who've already done that. I really appreciate staying connected. Again, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to serve you all and to be entrusted with the responsibility and the burden of responsibility that brings. I understand it completely. You do have a voice at the table. You can hear the no votes from January 6th forward. I'm going to continue to speak my mind. I'm going to continue to be your voice there at the commissioner's table. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to do what's right. I'm always going to have an answer for you. It may not always be the answer you want to hear, but you're going to get an answer back from me. So this is Chris Lukasiewicz, proud Carbon County Commissioner, eternally grateful to each and every one of you out in Carbon County, those who supported me, those who have issues, those who have concerns. As long as you're a resident, it matters to me. So please stay in touch. Happy Easter to everyone. Stay safe. Wear your mask. Social distance. Wear your mask. Social distance. And we'll see you on the backside of COVID-19. Thank you guys so much. Take care.